You know, every once in a while, a crime surfaces that feels less like a human act and more like a message, something carved into reality by hands that wanted to terrify, silence, or erase. A crime so savage, so confusing, so haunting, that even decades later, people still whisper about it, trying to make sense of something that never truly made sense. That's what we're dealing with tonight. Because tonight, we're going deep into the Keddie Cabin Murders, one of the darkest, most mysterious cases in American history. A case that has everything: brutality, corruption, missing evidence, vanished suspects, a kidnapped child, and a crime scene so overwhelming in its violence that seasoned investigators had to leave the cabin to catch their breath. And still, despite all of that, the killers were never brought to justice. To understand how something like this could happen, we need to rewind to a quiet mountain town in Northern California, tucked into the trees like a secret someone forgot to hide properly. A place that wasn't supposed to become the setting of one of the most horrifying unsolved crimes in modern true crime history: Keddie, California. Back in 1981, Keddie wasn't exactly a thriving resort. It was a fading one, a leftover from better times. Cabins that once held happy vacationers now rented to people who just needed somewhere to go, cheap, isolated, and out of the way. Perfect for families trying to start over, perfect also for people trying to disappear. The Sharp family was somewhere in the first category. Sue Sharp, Glenna Susan Sharp, was a tough, quiet, determined single mother raising 5 children. She had left her abusive husband, packed up everything she owned, and started over in Keddie with nothing but grit and hope. People described her as private but kind, dedicated to her kids, trying so hard to make life stable. Cabin 28 wasn't glamorous. It was small, cramped, drafty, and about as soundproof as a cardboard box. But it was home. It was what they could afford. And in a way, Sue felt safe there. She had friends around. Her kids had friends around. She believed the worst part of her life was behind her. Of course, she didn't know what was coming. No one could have. On the night of April 11th, 1981, the cabin was full. Her oldest daughter, Sheila, was staying next door for the night. Inside Cabin 28 were Sue, her sons John, Rick, and Greg, John's friend Dana, and the boy's friend Justin, who was spending the night. And it matters who Justin belonged to, because Justin's stepfather was Martin Mart Smart, who lived just a few cabins away. A man with a temper, a man with a criminal history, a man who would later confess to several people that he was involved in something terrible. But on that night, he was just the neighbor. Inside Cabin 28, around 11 p.m., things were winding down. John and Dana had gotten a ride back to the cabin earlier. The younger boys were watching TV. Sue was relaxing. A typical quiet evening inside, a place where nothing exciting ever seemed to happen. Then, sometime after midnight, something broke the silence. Someone came into the cabin, whether the killers knocked and were let in, or whether they let themselves in. We'll never know for sure. But investigators believe strongly that this wasn't a random break-in. Someone was targeted. Someone was angry. Someone came to Cabin 28 with a purpose. Imagine the moment they entered. The cold night air follows them in. The cabin is dim. Everyone inside is unaware of the storm about to hit. What happened next was explosive. At least 2 killers, according to the original investigative reports, stormed the living room. A massive struggle unfolded. A struggle so intense it shook the furniture, ripped apart the walls, and left blood across nearly every surface. Sue was beaten viciously. John fought back. Dana fought back. Chairs flipped. Furniture shattered. Investigators later said it was one of the most violent scenes they'd ever seen. And that's saying something. Multiple weapons were used. A hammer, a knife, a second knife that may have belonged to the killers. There was blood spatter on the ceiling, the walls, the floorboards, and even outside the cabin, where someone had touched the railing with bloody hands. And while all this was happening, while this nightmare was unfolding, 3 young boys slept in the next room. What does it take to sleep through something like that? What does it take to leave children alive when everyone else is being slaughtered? Was it mercy, or was it because some of the killers knew them? For investigators, that question stuck like a splinter. The next morning, around 7 a.m., Sheila Sharp returned home to grab a clean outfit before church. She opened the door, she stepped into the living room, and the world she knew evaporated. Her mother on the floor, her brother John, her brother's friend Dana, all 3 dead. all three restrained, beaten, stabbed, mutilated. She ran screaming out of the cabin, but when help arrived and police began searching the home, they made a chilling discovery. The three younger boys were safe, still asleep, untouched. It didn't make sense. Nothing made sense. And then, the final horror. 12-year-old Tina was gone. Gone without a trace. No struggle in her room, no signs of escape, nothing. Someone had taken her. This is where the case truly fractures, because what came next wasn't just a murder investigation. It was a chain of mistakes, cover-ups, ignored confessions, and evidence that disappeared so cleanly you'd think the cabin itself had eaten it. Let's start with the suspects. Almost immediately, people in town began whispering about Mart Smart and his friend, Beau Bubaid. Beau was an older man with ties to organized crime, a man who had been staying with Mart, a man who had no reason to be in Keddie unless he was hiding from something. They were seen around the cabins that night. They were acting strange. They had a history of violence. But here's the unbelievable part. Mart's wife told investigators, decades later, that Mart had come home the night of the murders with two friends, and that they were burning something in the fireplace. Clothes, shoes, evidence. We'll never know. But we do know this. Mart walked into a counselor's office shortly after the murders and confessed. He said he had done something terrible, something he couldn't take back. The counselor contacted the sheriff's department. They never followed up. Let me say that again. They never followed up. Not only that, Beau and Mart were both questioned briefly and released. That was it. No charges, no surveillance, nothing. And guess what they did next? They left town, just vanished. This would be infuriating enough on its own, but it gets worse. Justin, the young boy who slept in the cabin that night, later told stories that sounded like memories disguised as dreams. He described seeing two men in the living room, one with long hair, one with short hair, both wearing glasses. Sound familiar? Those were the exact descriptions of Mart and Beau. Justin said he saw a knife, he saw a hammer, he saw Tina being taken out the back door. He didn't get these ideas from nowhere. Years later, new investigators reviewed the original case files and said openly that they believed there was a deliberate effort to avoid pursuing certain suspects. They called it corruption. They called it obstruction. They called it unbelievable. And then, the discovery of Tina. 3 years after the murders, a man collecting bottles in the woods near Feather Falls found a fragment of a skull. A forensic anthropologist confirmed it was Tina's, nearly 100 miles away. Who drives a kidnapped child that far into the wilderness, and why? Her remains were scattered, weathered, left in a place so remote that it was clear this wasn't an accident. She was taken there, placed there, and someone knew exactly where she was. Because months before Tina's remains were discovered, the sheriff's office received an anonymous call. A man said he knew where her body could be found. The call was recorded and then lost. Not listened to, not investigated. It wasn't discovered until decades later, inside a box of old evidence. Imagine hearing that recording, knowing that if someone had just taken it seriously, maybe, just maybe, more of the truth would have surfaced sooner. Over the years, retired investigators came forward. Several claimed they believed the killers were well known. Some believed there was a cover-up. Others said it was incompetence. Others hinted at something darker, that certain people were protected. Even today, independent researchers and cold case teams say they have strong theories, strong evidence, and strong suspicions. But without official charges, the truth remains locked behind decades of silence, fear, and small-town politics. Cabin 28 itself was demolished in 2004. Some people think it was to remove an eyesore. Others believe it was to erase a painful reminder. But tearing down the building didn't erase what happened there. Didn't erase the fingerprints left by killers. Didn't erase the mistakes or the corruption or the chilling fact that 3 young boys were left alive when everyone else was butchered. Why were they spared? Did the killers know them? Were they witnesses who had to be controlled, not eliminated? These questions haunt the Keddie case. Maybe the killers are dead. Maybe they're alive. Maybe they lived ordinary lives afterward, carrying the weight of what they did, or not feeling any guilt at all. Or maybe, and this is the darkest possibility, they felt protected, because someone in authority made sure they walked away free. If you've stayed with me this far, tell me in the comments what you think happened. Do you believe the killers were known? Were they protected? Was this a planned attack? Or a rage-filled explosion that ended 3 lives and stole another? Whatever the truth is, it's still out there. Somewhere in the cold silence of the Keddie Mountains. Somewhere in a box of evidence that was never fully reviewed. Somewhere in the memories of people who never spoke up. And until someone breaks that silence, Cabin 28 will never stop whispering. Before we wrap up, I want to speak directly to you, the person still here, still listening, still thinking about the unsettling journey we just walked through together. If you've made it this far, you're not just a viewer. You're part of a community of people who search for answers, who question the hidden corners of true crime, and who don't look away from the stories that matter. So if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and join us. When you subscribe, you're not just supporting this channel. You're helping build a space where important cases stay alive, where victims are remembered, and where we continue digging into the stories others forget. And if you want to go even deeper, turn on all notifications. That way, you'll never miss a case breakdown, a new investigation, or the next mystery we unravel together. Most importantly, I want to hear from you. Drop your thoughts, theories, or insights in the comments. This channel isn't just my voice, it's ours. Thanks for being here. Thanks for staying curious. And as always, stay safe, stay aware, and I'll see you in the next one.